We'd like to welcome y'all to our Hereford Proud Ambassador meeting. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Hereford Proud Ambassadors in case you haven't been with us before. If you're new, this is a group that we started several years ago that we kind of wanted to help bridge community and parents and staff and kind of just bridge everybody to work together. And so we thought tonight might be a great time to talk about the VATRE, and then we also want to talk about financial transparency. So tonight, hopefully you all had something to eat. If not, there's still some out back there. Make sure you get plenty to eat. Also, before we end tonight, if you want to be part of our Hereford Proud Ambassador program, we will have another meeting in April. We started having 2 meetings a year, so we'd love for you to be part of that. So we may be asking you if you're interested in that. No matter the reason you're here tonight, we're just glad you're here. We welcome you all to be here. We're going to start off with Daniel Bartles tonight to talk about our financial transparency.
Good evening. So one of the requirements that we have with TEA is with Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, which is an acronym for FIRST. So the last several years we've been in Superior. Well, since it started, we've been in Superior. And so for the 24, if you look at the bottom, 24-25, which is actually from 23-24, we were at 98. We also wanted to go over our revenue and expenditures over the several years. We do have fund balance, so it's like a savings account, but we have restrictions on fund balance, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. So last year, well, for 23-24, we're still closing out 24-25, so I don't have accurate numbers to give you a full picture of where we're at. 23-24, we had a fund balance of $22 million. Our revenue was $43 million. Our expenditures were $44 million. Our students to staff was 6.3. Our fall enrollment was 339.50. So our total staff FTEs is 607 staff that we have on hand. So I mentioned fund balance. How does our fund balance grow? It's from positions that we budgeted that we were unable to fill. So these are teachers that we were unable to fill, or special ed teachers, sometimes counselors, anything. So if we're not able to fill those positions, that money gets put into our fund balance. We also have unspent budgets. Every department, every campus has a budget that they can purchase what they need to fulfill the school year. If they're not able to use all the funds that are given to them, that goes back into fund balance. And then when we purchase, if we do a large group of purchase, all the campuses want the same kind of playground equipment, because we just did that. We do it as a bulk, and we get a discount when we do big purchases like that. We also have the opportunity for Chapter 313s, which is solar and wind. We have 1 wind and 2 solar that have come to us. Then our requirements for fund balance is the state requires 3 months, 90 days. Our local policy requires 120 days. And then there's fund designation. So we have committed, which is a board action. We have assigned, we have restricted, and non-spendable, which is our prepaids and our inventories and long-term notes. And then we have the unassigned. This is what 24. Non-spendable in inventories, we had 131,000. Prepayments, 32,000. We didn't have anything restricted. We had committed 2.2 for construction, equipment, and other expenditures. Assigned, unassigned, we had 19. $2,735,000. So our total fund was $22 million. But the required, the 120 days, is $14,000,009. So that only leaves us $4,000,007. This is a pie chart of our revenue. Taxes is about 13 million, sorry. Then the state provides, I can't read it from here, 20 million. The federal, this is money we get from the federal government. It's from indirect cost, from federal money we get. So right now we have 73,000. And then the other expenditures is what we get from football games, volleyball games, any other kind of donations and that kind is 3.3 million, 5 million. So our expenditures, instruction, this is teachers and all supplies, everything that you need for instruction is 21 million. The next one is school leadership administration. That is your principals, assistant principals. That's 3.5. Your student support services is nursing, counseling, and social workers. Transportation to get the kids around is 1.2. Extracurricular is 1.8. That's athletic, UIL, academic, all extracurricular activities, FFA, anything CTE. Maintenance custodial is 6.4. Technologies is 1.6. Security is 323,000, and administration is 2.3. This is the last several years of our tax rate. In 2018, it was $1.04. Since then, our tax rate has dropped every year. In 2018, we did not have a bond. 2019, the bond came on, so that's why we have an INS. The original presented to the community was at 13 cents. We got it to 11 cents for that bond payment for that year. This is what the board adopted this year. Our payroll is 33 million. Our contracted service is 2 million. Supplies is 2.8. Other operating is 2 million. Leases, 285. Capital projects, 127. What we get from taxes is 14 million. The state revenue is 26 million, and federal revenue is roughly 250. So we're looking at a $41 million budget. Food service has its own budget. So revenue from food service is 205. That's from catering and kids eating a la carte items. State revenue is we get reimbursed from Texas Department of Agriculture every month for the kids that eat with us is, no, sorry, that's wrong. The state revenue is a matching revenue that we get from the state. That's $14,000. The federal revenue is what we get from the Texas Department of Agriculture, that we get claimed meals, breakfast and lunch from all students, and all students eat for free. It's $3 million. Our payroll is 120. Our contracted services, we do use a food service management company, so our contract service is higher because they do most of the employee and do run the cafeteria is 2.9. Supplies is 242. Other expenses will be like for advertising and postage is 2,000. So food service is 3.3 million. Our debt service. This is what we should get from your taxes, 1.8 million. Our payment is 1.875. So we do get a little revenue back, but most of it goes back to the debt payment. This is our debt principal and interest. So up to 2034, these are the payments, the principal and interest. The payments are due every February 15th and August 15th. This is our federal grants that we receive from the federal government. We have Title I at 1.1, Title I Part C migrant at 213,000, Title II is 179, Title II ELA is 113, Title III for immigration is 5,000, Title IV is 88,000, Perkins is 51,000, IDEA B is special ed is 871. IDEA B's preschool for special ed is 30,000. Then we have the homeless grant is 12,000. The learning acceleration support opportunities is 775,000. Then we have cycle part B of cycle 3 at 200,000. So a total of $3.7 million that we get from the federal government. Does anybody have any questions?
You did a great job. We have to stay stationary here because we are being videoed back here by our media team. They are live streaming this to go out to homes for people who couldn't be here. There is a couple of things I'd like to talk about just for a second before we move on to the other part of the program. Number one is 82%, 83% of our budget is payroll. And that's a pretty good number statewide. It's a little higher than some districts. It's a lot lower than others. I've been in districts where we've had 88% as our percentage for payroll. So 82, 83 is a pretty good percentage for payroll. Number two, and I don't have it up here now. Can y'all see it? The federal money is under attack. I don't know if you realize that or not. Last weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend before, Trump shut down special ed. Before he did that, he shut down migrant. Before he did that, he shut down immigration. All of these monies are being cut. And I don't know if you remember in the summer, it came out that all federal funds were frozen. We're not giving you any federal money. And then it came out and every category in the federal budget was cut. So we had to scramble quickly to take local money to cover that because our board is not ever going to allow us to pass a deficit budget. That means we have to get creative. And so you start to think about the financial integrity of a district, and it becomes very difficult to do, very difficult to maintain when those funds continue to decrease every year. I don't know if you noticed, from $1.04 to what we are proposing this year is going to be about a 35-cent cut in what we have figured, or what the M&O rate has been compressed over the last several years. That's money that has been taken away, and I can almost hear somebody say, well, the state makes that up. No, they don't. No, they don't. If the basic allotment is $61.60, then they make sure you get up to $61.60 for each student. Now the basic allotment is $62.15. So what they'll do is they'll look at our attendance and they'll see what we have. They'll say the local revenue will bring this much money. We will make sure you have $62.15 for each kid. The reality is, in the state of Texas, it costs a whole lot more than $62.15 to educate a child, especially when you consider teachers, books, technology, all the other things that go along with that. So who gets to make up that deficit? Well, we have to come up with creative ways to find out and to bring funds into the district to cover up some of those holes. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do with this VATRE. I think David said maybe the last time we had a town hall that when you go to the legislators and you ask them, when are you going to increase the basic allotment, one of the first things they'll ask you is, have you done a VATRE? Have you gone back to your community and gotten the pennies back that we have taken from you? And if the answer is no, then guess what their response is going to be? You need to go have a VATRE then and get some of that money back. This time we're asking for 3 pennies. And we're asking for 3 golden pennies. And you say, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. I get that. I understand that. The reason they're golden is because they're worth more, because the lion's share of that money comes from the state, and because they cannot be recaptured. No matter what the state does, unless they change the state funding laws, that money cannot be changed or taken away from a school district. And so we're going out after the 3. We could have gone after the 9 as well, which would have been a total of 12 for about a total of $4 million. We could have used that in our budget. We could have used that for a lot of different things in our budget. But we decided to go out for the 3 this time and see how that works and see what we can do with it in a positive way to influence kids and to help teachers. I could go on and on and on. I've gone on and on with this stuff for the last, 3 or 4 months. Sometimes I forget what all I have said, but there are 2 experts here, one from the construction side and one from our finance guru is here from Government Capital, and they're more prepared to answer questions than specifics that you may have. One of the things that I probably ought not say this, but I'm going to anyway. I tried to alleviate some of the angst about the 2018 bond, but that seemed to stir up more issues than it helped. The reality is this: when an auditor comes into a school district and audits, you don't just give him what you think he ought to audit. An auditor comes in and audits based on very specific rules and regulations set out not just by the federal state government, but also by federal law. And so those things are clear. I've been in districts where they'll come in and say, we want to see it all. And it takes about 2 weeks for them to do that sort of audit. And they come in and they go through everything. They even go through personnel files to see, do you have a job description? Do you have all of those things in there? So for someone to say that an audit is just, well, what you give them back, that's not true. That's misinformed. For them to come back and say that someone also posted this, that construction costs have nothing to do with the bond. If we went out for a bond, it was $22.4 million in 2018. For us to have to go to fund balance to finish that out in 2023 means you misused the money. No, it doesn't. In fact, I verified these numbers today with Gallagher. Gallagher's a pretty large construction company. And construction costs since 2019 have risen 40%. Write that down, 40%. So if I started, now just think about this, if I started with $22,400,000, how many of you can do the math on what 40% increase would be? It's a little over $8.8 million. So if I've got an $8.8 million increase, but the board goes and gets 3 point something out of fund balance, they did a pretty good job maintaining what they said they were going to do and went a whole lot better than the 40%. 50%, this is what shocked me, 50% for specialized buildings in education. The construction rate has risen 50% since 2019. So don't be misled and have someone say COVID didn't affect anything. I guarantee it affected the construction company, and it made buildings that cost $70 million to build a high school back in 2018, 19, 20, now $150 million to build that same high school. Construction costs have just gone up and up and up. One question people always ask is this: what are you going to use the money for? If we, as voters, give this to you, what are you going to use the money for? Well, there's a flyer back there in the back, I think, or it used to be. If not, I can get you one, that talks about all the things that the board has made as priorities. None of those are capital outlay projects for anything, not athletics, not new buildings, not anything. There are maintenance issues that need to be dealt with. There are parking lot issues that need to be dealt with. There are technology issues that need to be dealt with. But one of the biggest glaring things that needs to be dealt with is, and this is my opinion, I haven't really talked to the board about this, is the low at-will starting pay that we have in our district. In fact, I think my wife made fun of me the other night because I was interviewed on the Channel 7 News, and I said, it's way low in Hereford. She said, I know you did not just say way low. I said, no, I didn't. You run that back. Listen. She said, the correct English would have been extremely low. I said, yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So she corrected that, and it is extremely low. Our lowest salary in the district is $11 an hour. That's I'm just going to be honest. That to me, that's embarrassing, and we need to do better. These funds could be used to help raise those salaries where they need to be. Are we going to get there with $2 million? No, but we sure can cut it. We can cut that deficit and raise them quite a bit. Let me ask you this. How many of you have questions out there? Anybody have any questions? I did ask, since we did so well and y'all have it all. Yes.
Probably don't have the question here, but we hear a lot of questions out in the community. So we hear a lot of questions about what's happening or what's going on, questioning. But of course, being here and hearing it, probably don't have a question up here.
Okay. Do you have one you want to give to us?
It's most of it from what I hear is yes. Where is the money going to be going to? That's what we're looking for, because they've seen things in the past that has happened, and that's been the biggest issue with them wanting to make a decision.
Let me respond to that by saying this. I've been in a position like I'm in here for a long time in several other districts. And although I was not involved in the 2018 district bond, I wasn't involved in the expenditures, I wasn't involved in any of the building, I can tell you this. As an outsider looking in, they did exactly what they said they were going to do, and they went to fund balance to fix the other things that were not included in the bond but became issues as it went along. One of the biggest things is, well, they misused the money. I can't find that. And let me tell you, I'm not going to be somebody that sweeps something under the rug because I find it. If I found it, I would say, hey, we messed up here, here, and here, and we need to correct that. I have not found it. What I found is a first rating since 2017 of superior or better. What I found is audits that are clean without any material findings. Those things don't just happen. They happen because in the bond you said we're going to do this, 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 and this, and even went so far as to break it down per elementary school and high school how they were going to spend it. And they did it that way. The board did it that way. I can honestly say I've gone to some places where, hey, we messed up, and we had to regain the trust of the community to do that. I haven't found that here. That's why I wrote the article for last week's paper, because I have not found that. But I had several people in the community ask me specifically that question, so I responded in the best way I knew how to do it. The money is going to be spent for the kids, and the money is going to be spent for staff. Somebody said, well, no, you're just going to use it to line administrators' pockets. I can promise you this, I will not see a dime of that money. I will not ask for that money, and I will not see a dime of that money. To me, it needs to start down here, as I said, with the lowest income and raise that up. And we were I'll just tell you, we were at Aikman Elementary, and I was talking to the staff, and I threw that question out. Well, what do y'all think we should use the money for? And one of the teachers that was sitting at one of the front tables said this: we need to start with the at-will and with our instructional aides and give them the money they deserve for the work they do in the classroom. Hey, I'm with them on that. I'm 100% with them. I think that's exactly what we need to do. We need to start there. We need to get off $11 an hour and talk about 13 or 14 and then let that go up through the system. Is it going to work with $2 million? I don't know. But we can get creative, and we can make sure that we try to do the best for our teachers, our aides, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, all of those people. We found out by meeting with SFE that whatever we do with our at-will people, they do with theirs. So they are very excited. If something happens in Hereford, they get the same kind of raise. And there they are back there. They cooked your meal tonight. And they do a great job. So I can say this in answer to your question, staff and students are going to benefit from this. This administrator is not going to take a dime. I'm just going to tell you. Any other questions?
Can you just explain where the three pennies, right? I know it's not like I'm giving 3 pennies and I'm good. Like how that works, you know, where that comes out of and who's actually paying that and who has to pay. Is this guy paying 3 pennies because he owns this much property, or is he paying 6 pennies? Or how does that work?
Okay, first, and David, you may have to answer all this, but first, we have to ask the state, how many golden pennies do we have? Well, they gave 5 years ago, and the board could vote and adopt those pennies immediately, which they did here. We have the 5. Can't ever take it away. So if the tax rate last year was 64 cents on the M&O side, we added the 5 cents and it became 69. Okay? The state allows us to have 3 more golden pennies, but also 9 copper. And those are just available from the state because that's the way the finance law works. The reason we're going after the golden pennies, as I said, is because they're state funded at 71%. We get $658 million for each penny. Million. Oh, I like that million better. $658,000 for a total of $1.974 million. Okay, where does that money come from? Well, 71% of that money is coming from the state. They already have it in the bank down there, and they're already using the interest to do other things with it. They ought to kick it back to education so we can do what we need to do, but they don't. Okay, how does that affect us? How does that affect me as a taxpayer? And that's what I'm understanding your question to be. If I'm 65 and over, my taxes are not frozen anymore, they're capped. The reason they're not frozen is because they can be lowered. They can never go up unless you build, let's say you buy 15 more acres and build another house on your property, they're going to come reappraise, and then your taxes are going to go up. But as it is right now, unless you make major improvements to your property, 65 and over are not going to see a tax increase. In fact, if the homestead exemption is passed and raises to $200,000, then your taxes will go down. And if they're less than 200, if your house is appraised at 200,000 or less, your school taxes will go to 0. So that means if I paid $500 last year for my school taxes, which you can find that out by pulling your report, my taxes are actually going to go to 0. So is it going to affect someone that's 65 or over? No. There'll be 0 effect. Your taxes should go down, may go all the way to 0. The other homestead exemption that's on the ballot, and I believe it's Proposition 13, I voted this morning. Proposition 13 raises the homestead exemption for 64 and below from $100,000 to $140,000. Okay, so we've got our calculators out there. We've got little sheets we gave you. You can look on those sheets to see what the effect is. The average house in Hereford is $173,808, and the effect at 3 cents is 85 cents a month. Now, when you go in and figure what the actual tax is going to be, which is 0.0216, it's actually 61 cents a month. It's actually lower than what it is. And you say, well, what happened? Well, our taxes were once again compressed. And so when you add the compression or subtract the compression from the golden pennies, then you actually didn't go up 3 cents. Do you see the point? Someone asked the question the other day, well, how long is this going to be our tax rate? Well, it's our tax rate till we adopt a new one. But if the state continues to do what they did since 2018, what they've done since 2018, then those taxes are going to be compressed next year, aren't they? Because they've done it consistently since 2018. It has been 5 or 6 cents. This is the lowest it's been since 2018, the lowest compression, that is. And so the tax rate will stay the same until the compression goes down. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Online, I got a question that says, how will the tax increase affect farm and ranch landowners? For example,
I'm gonna defer this one to the expert. There are some exemptions on the ballot though for even ag.
That's correct. That's a great question. Your homestead is obviously your home, and it can be up to 20 acres if you're not using that 20 acres for some type of ag purpose. Everything else would be calculated at ag values, and you can go to the county and determine kind of how much they value each of those acreages. We have an ag chart that we can produce, but it'll be 3 cents times the value of the non-exempted properties. So it's still 3 cents across the board for any of those properties. Does that answer that? They still do an ag exemption. Obviously, if you're a landowner, you understand how that works. You just need to make sure those are filed and up to date. But yes, that 3 cents would apply, or actually 2.16 will be how much more it is next year than this year if the 3 cents passes because of compression. And Dr. Carter mentioned compression. It's now state law that if statewide values go up more than 2.5%, and lately they've been 10 and 12% statewide. This year they stayed a little bit flat because we had a real push from the legislature to keep them flat. But if values go up more than 2.5%, what happens is your school tax rate gets compressed so that you're only getting 2.5% new money here. One year I think it was compressed as much as 17 cents 2 years ago. And like Dr. Carter said, this is the slimmest year, I guess, for compression. But we expect next year that you'll be back to 2 or 3 cents of compression. So, good question.
Talk about the need to file homestead.
Yes.
If we vote on this, right, it's gonna be, what, November the 4th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when does it take effect?
It would take effect immediately. Yes. So in your county your assessor, your collector then will resubmit bills based on that new tax rate?
No, we did not submit the bills until we.
Okay, so they didn't submit bills. So your tax bill will reflect what your payment will be for the end of December or end of January if you pay without, a late fee.
So our taxes are just gonna be for those 2 months, or is it gonna be
It'll be retroactively for the year.
for the whole year?
Yes, that's correct.
Why?
That's just how your tax bill is based on your year 2025. The tax notice you have now that's due December 31st is based on your 2025 values.
Well, they're really due on January the 31st, I think.
Well, they're actually due December 31st, but you can pay them as late as or December 30th. You can pay them as late as January 31st with no penalty. That's typically when I pay mine too.
All right, I just wanted to know why we have to pay the whole year if we had it.
Yeah, this would be. This would just be the. This would be.
Asking because it's like if I went and bought a car in December, or in November, right? But if I started paying for it in January and I didn't have the car, why?
Because how your local property taxes work with cities, counties, schools, hospital districts. There's a tax rate that's applied to your values that were given to you in May, or that you saw your initial values in May, and then what you pay at the end of the year funds that entire year. They don't prorate. So either way,
It's actually 2 tax rates, isn't it?
yeah.
That's what she's asking.
Well, she's asking if
I think she's asking if the tax rate's gonna go all the way back to January, or is it gonna stop in August?
no. That's what I was answering. Yeah, it'll cover the whole year. That'll be the tax rate for the district for their year. I hope that made sense. Good question. If you have not filed your homestead exemption, we run across people all the time that haven't done their homestead exemptions. Be sure that you go file that homestead exemption. If somebody in your home that's kind of on the note turns 65, the minute they turn 65, be sure and go file that homestead exemption. Those are very, very important. Yes?
So if you file the homestead exemption, you turn 65, excuse me, will that be effective on the tax bill we're about to get?
Yes, that's correct. If you file it before the end of December, end of 2025.
Tomorrow, the tax bill that they're gonna send me November 5th is gonna reflect that.
It should, yes. And if not, I would call them and make sure.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah, and that's the thing, he decided not to send out those until
Okay.
November 5th,
Okay, good.
so we didn't have to change it.
It's not confusing.
So what's the poll on this thing passing or not passing? Are we feeling good about it right now, or is this meaning like we're not voters, like how, what's the
We
vote?
gotta get people to vote. We gotta get people to vote for it. That's what we got to have that.
Yes.
How will it benefit students? I'm hearing, staff, how about students?
Sure. You want to answer that? How will it benefit students?
Anytime you benefit staff, you benefit students, that's number one. But number two, I don't know if you noticed, and I wish I had that slide up here, but I'm not gonna mess with it because I'll burn the computer up. If you look at that federal money, I'll just give you one example. Right now, they're talking about, they've cut the migrant, they've cut the immigration allotments, and they're telling us now that they may not even redo those after this year. So let's think about not having your migrant. Let's think about not having your immigration, your ESL, some of those other bilingual services that we have. Where are we going to get the money for that? Where's that money going to come from? And so that would directly benefit students, because I talked to the board back in June when we first heard frozen money, what are we going to do? I said, we have to serve our students. They need those aides. They need those mentors. They need those instructional aides to help them go from one step to the other. If the federal government stops funding them, we are going to have to fund them locally. That money would benefit those students directly, immediately, starting next school year, if they actually do what they say they're going to do. Plus, you look at some of that, and every year we sit down. This is, the first summer that I had this year. But you sit down and you start talking about, well, which program can we cut? Which program are we not using? Because we need to benefit over here. I remember when I came in here, I don't know, some people said I got here June, some people said I got here in July, some people said I didn't start till August.
It was August.
Anyway, I remember walking in the back banquet room and seeing a picture up on the, whatever that is, screen, $789,000. Any of y'all remember what that was for? It was for those books that we don't buy, because kids don't use books in our district anymore, right? That was sarcasm, by the way. We do use books. We do have curriculum. And first summer I was here, we spent $789,000 on curriculum and books. This summer, because the state required us to do Bluebonnet curriculum, guess what we had to do again? Buy more books and buy more. Where does that money come from? It could come from this. Those are immediate things where the students are going to benefit immediately. I mentioned this. It didn't make it to the news station, but I'll mention it here. I have a council that I sit down with once a month, and it's a council of students. And in the sophomore, juniors, and senior group, they started talking to me about restrooms. Now just think about that for a second. You mean you can't, and I remember Miss Alonzo telling me, I walked into the restroom, there were 3 girls around a stall, and I thought we were getting ready to have a fight. I said, well, what was going on? She said 2 of the girls were holding the door shut so the other one could go to the restroom because they won't stay shut. And then one of the other girls told me, yeah, and not only that, but you can have a conversation with the person sitting next to you because there's a 3-inch gap. We need to fix that stuff. That's going to benefit students. We need to fix that stuff now. And you say, well, why are you waiting? Well, we're not. Where's Mr. Hedrick? He's back there somewhere. We already have a budget. We've already started doing some of that stuff now because those things have to be fixed because the kids say they need to be fixed. So that's just a couple of things that would benefit them immediately.
Dr. Carter, I put my house value into the calculator, and if the homestead exemption passes from 100,000 to 140,000, it shows that my taxes will actually go down $19.
A month or a year?
I don't know, is it a monthly?
Can I hear you?
appraisal district, your value, and use this calculator to see how it changes your taxes, because this will give you a pretty good picture of what's gonna happen. That way you don't have to speculate and think, oh, my taxes are gonna go up a huge amount. Mine actually show that it's gonna go down.
Now, what taxes or is that what you're saying is,
The homestead exemption goes from 100,000 to 140,000. It's on the ballot.
Yeah.
that's on the ballot, and that's
Proposition 13.
Yes, there's,
assume it doesn't, what is it gonna be? Just so people know, like, I'm worst case scenario guy, I think I've been coming to these for a long time, I'll be worst case scenario, let's assume it doesn't pass, but if it doesn't pass, what is it? Just so people can know.
You'd have to run it through the she's got the calculator back there on her phone, run it.
yeah,
Run it real quick.
just add 40,000 back to the value and see.
She's got it on there. She's got it on the calculator.
And if you're not aware where they're talking, there's a QR code on the back of this flyer. You can click on that and it'll take you to the calculator.
And me, just so y'all know, I don't think they should be, I think the community should be the ones that provide our kids funding and what they need for education, because I don't think the Fed should be in our business, we should be paying it ourselves. The community should step up and pay more taxes for our kids to be educated, but I know that's a struggle for people to accept, because we've gotten so used to, let the feds do it, but then they get too much say in what our kids do
That's right.
and what they have to learn. So I'd rather than say, let's put some money out of our pockets because our kids do need that.
So to answer your question, if the homestead exemption does not pass, then mine will go up $3.
That's what I'm saying, like, it's not, people see, oh, taxes are going up and they really don't know, so they're not gonna go vote. But that's what they need to hear, you know what I mean? They're not gonna do the math.
Right.
Use the calculator. That's why if you'll take this link that he's talking about on this flyer and click on it, you'll go to that website. And are there 5 calculators there now?
12.
One of them is if the homestead exemption doesn't pass. One of them is the homestead exemption passes at 140. One of them is the homestead exemption for 65 and over, and one of them is my taxes were this last year, what will they be this year if this passes? So there's 4 calculators on that QR code that you can go look at.
It's important to know, though, one of these votes has never failed the raising homestead exemption. And it normally passes at 86%. So that's why you can pretty much go ahead and figure that it's gonna be 140.
And if you voted yet, you probably saw, and if you haven't voted, there's 17 propositions on there. 9 has to do with business equipment exemptions. So if you own a Subway, in the past you could exempt about $2,500 of your equipment. This will bump that up to $125,000. Proposition 11 and Proposition 13 have to do with the under 65, the $100,000 homestead exemption moving to 140. And then the other one has to do with the over 65 going from 110 to 200,000. And then Sherry, you had a question?
I was just going to state for everybody in the room and then those online, if you can reiterate this, David, just, we're talking about 2 different, I mean, the same kind of thing, but make very clear the propositions are something completely separate that they're voting on aside from the VATRE. So I just don't want everybody to get those things confused like it's one vote. They're voting on two things.
Yep.
So that's what I
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody's very clear on that.
Great point. Great point.
The
That,
last one, I voted today, the very last one is this one.
yeah, it should be Prop A, right?
Yeah, it's
The,
only one.
the very last item on that ballot should be this item. So you want to make sure, it's easy sometimes to go, oh man, that's a lot of stuff. But you got to get to that last one to vote for that, vote your conscience for that. Yes?
I just want to point out also that on the ballot, almost the first words that you see are tax increase in all capital letters. But once you understand the facts and by using that calculator, you'll understand that some might not see an increase, or if you do, it is very minimal.
Several years ago, the state required that any school ballot involving a bond or a VATRE had to include the language that said this is a tax increase, whether your taxes go down or not. That's state law. The other thing I'd point out, and I know Dr. Carter mentioned it, but on this flyer, there's that picture of those pennies down there on the bottom. If you'll notice, every penny if this passes, will bring in $658,000 new money per penny. 192 of that is generated locally, and the state by law has to pony up the other 466,000. So the state, quite honestly, would like for this VATRE to fail, because that would keep them from having to give up another $500,000 per penny.
And that's every year, right?
That's every year. And that's also part of why that language says, hey, don't forget, this is a tax rate or tax increase, but this is the only way to access those dollars from the state. Otherwise, they keep them and do what they want with them. Yeah, I could argue all the way back to about 1992, but it's yes, sir, it's complicated. It's gotten a lot more complicated in the last 15, 18 years. And again, I don't think there's any point in me doing this presentation, but I've got a whole fun presentation if you really want to get irritated at how convoluted it is. So, yes, sir. Yes.
If VATRE isn't passed, what is Hereford ISD's move or plan moving forward? And if it is passed, how can the community track where the funds are going?
Okay. That's a great question.
The answer to the first part of your question is we're going to have to get very creative. There are going to have to be some cuts made in order to do the things that we need to do for our kids. That's the bottom line. And for our staff, because I think our staff deserve, to be compensated in a fair way. What would we do? When I was in Lipan, we passed a bond. The PAC committee became the bond oversight committee. So every month I met with that committee and said, here's what we're doing with your money that you just gave us. Here's how these expenditures are being done. What I would propose we do is take something similar to that, because we need to have a committee put together to discuss how we're even going to spend the VATRE money. And I would love to have some community members on that for transparency, so that people couldn't say, oh no, they're lying, and I'd rather have community members on it, like we have on the PAC, to help us oversee how this money is spent. And so one of the things that I want to do, because you talk about the bottom line of a salary, I'm going to send if this passes on the 4th, I'm going to send an email out to all staff on the 5th that'll have a survey in it. And the survey is going to ask this question: do you want a raise that goes into your salary, or do you prefer to have the one-time or two-time contributions each year? And I'm going to tell you, I've never done that here, but I did it 6 times in Lipan, and every time they said we want a check twice a month, or a check twice a year that would help us compensate. And I would always say, why? Tell me why. Because that's unbudgeted money for our household. So that's one of the things I will ask them: how do you want to spend that money? The other thing I'm going to ask them is, what do you think some other things this money could go to? Because I can tell you, just the small conversation that we've had about money now is going to cost about $1 million. So what are we going to do with the other half? That's a good question. And I think we need to be transparent enough to be able to say, hey, we're going to spend it on this, we're going to spend it on this, and then at the end come back and say, we spent it on this, we spent it on this, and we spent it on this, so that the community can. That's the only way you build trust, is to be transparent.
Good questions.
That was a great question. Any other questions?
If it passes, how quickly will the funds come in?
Well, when we approved our tax rate in August, we approved it assuming it's going to pass. What happened last time was it didn't pass, so we had to have a special meeting in November, or y'all had a special meeting in November to revert it back. This year, the assessor came to me and said, is there any way we can not send out tax notices? Do you have a problem with us not sending out any tax notices until November 5th? And I said, no, I don't have any problem with that at all, because that way you don't have to redo it, and then if we have to go back, we can redo it, and then you can send it back out. When does it go into effect? It goes into effect immediately, because we've already set the rate. We set the rate August 31st or somewhere in that range, end of August. So the tax rate's already in place. The bills haven't gone out for that, but those monies will start flowing immediately. I don't know, we get off in the weeds with the summary of finance. Okay, the summary of finance is something that you can look at daily if you want to, and you can see when they actually start pouring that money back into our accounts. And so, you know, what we would hope is that by the 1st of January, we start seeing the addition come in, if that makes sense. But what we would do,
Money that the state's on the hook for, when will that come in?
that's what I'm saying,
That's, yeah.
So it's all tied together.
no, it's all, yeah, the summary of finance will, they'll either start giving it to us immediately or they'll wait. And that's a lot of times on them. A lot of times on their red tape and how they do it. But I've seen them wait and settle up at the end in September of next year. Whereas you know this is coming, you know this is gonna be the budget, and we put this in. And by the way, I'll just for the sake of transparency, we didn't budget the 3 cents. We passed our budget without the 3 cents in it, so we wouldn't have to go back and redo the budget. So this will be surplus money. And the board will have to decide, are we gonna allocate this stuff, or are we gonna, you know, how are we gonna do it? And that's where the transparency thing comes in, you know, and are we gonna do one-time checks, two-time checks, and then next year talk about adding it to the salary? What are we gonna do? Because generally the salaries for staff are voted on in June, July, somewhere in there, and usually not revisited until then. So that money would start being used immediately, because we would hope we'd get it before September.
Yeah, absolutely. And he makes a great point. You know, those initial, once you start getting tax receipts in from your tax bills into December, January, and even into the 1st of February, that portion, that local portion will be in those dollars. And then if this passes, then we'll report to the state the new tax rate through their funding system. And then it'll take them a little bit of time to update that, and then we'll start to get those dollars back from the state. And that's part of, sir?
You would hope January.
Yeah, we'd hope in January, but again, it's the state. And that's part of why we have Danielle keeping an eye on that fund balance. There's so much fund balance you have to keep in the bank, because it's not like our savings account. You know, we don't touch my savings account at home. This is more like a cash flow tool, because the state sends you money 6 or 8 times a year, and then you get local receipts for a couple of months, and the state goes back and sends you money, and that fund balance helps us manage that. Yes.
I have a question regarding the salaries. So we're assuming the tax rate, let's say it passes, the increase, and we're allotting so much for teacher, either lump sum payments or ongoing salaries. Have you guys thought about what's gonna happen in 3, 4, 5 years when there's still inflation? We're still possibly looking at deficits, but we've already promised our teachers X amount. How is that gonna look in 4 or 5 years from now?
Well, you never make a flat rate promise. That's why the survey is so important. Because what I would explain to them is, it's a whole lot easier for us to budget twice a year to give you a one-time payment than it is to maintain something for 3 to 5 years. And so that's where the other 9 cents could come in. It may be that in 5 years, we come back and say, okay, we have 9 more cents we can get on the M&O side. They've compressed and compressed and compressed. Now we want to go back and add it back in. And so you would hope the VATRE would be there at that point, and there would be enough trust in the community to say, well, they did what they said they were going to do last time. We'll trust them to do what they said they're going to do this time. And so that would be my plan off the top of my head, would be to go right back to the VATRE in 3 to 5 years, if that's what we needed to do. Does that answer your question? But you can also see why it's easier from a budget standpoint to say, hey, this year we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this. We'll see what we can afford next year. We're going to give you this, we're going to give you this. And then, but because if you put it on the base or you add it to the midpoint, however we do it, that's there. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. Yes. Yes. But so that'll be up to our employees, I would think. And, you know, they may get a good bump this year, and because of inflation, may not be able to get one. I know traditionally over the last 5 or 6 years, y'all have given something every year. And so we try to maintain that and try not to get crazy where we can do that. But had we had this money, we could have leveled it up quite a bit this year to get that money where it needed to be.
Big question in the back.
Dr. Carter, I was just gonna say, that's the thing, we vote on this
Yes,
until we go out for another tax
correct.
increase.
Yes,
So
that
it's
money doesn't go
not
away.
a done deal
Right.
every year.
However, inflation is horrible. We didn't talk about this, but they gave us a $55 increase on the basic allotment. And according to inflation, they should have given us $1,400 per child more. They didn't do it. They didn't even keep up with inflation.
How much does, low state test scores and absence affect our budget? Is that a thing? 'Cause that's what I hear. I don't know, like, that's something I hear, like, oh, because the kids are being absent, we're not getting our money, or, oh, our the test scores are low, we're not getting the money we should be getting because we're like this tier here, and we're not at this tier here on our state test scores. How does that affect it, and what percentage would that be?
Well, the attendance rate affects it immediately. If a kid's absent from school, we lose $35 to $37 a student per day. So stop and think that, add that about 3,900 kids times 35 per day, that's a lot of money. So the attendance rate last year our attendance rate was 93. Right now we're running about 95 because we've been trying to emphasize it. It needs to be about 97. There's a lot of money between 93 and 97 that will come back to the district if we get the attendance rate up. The low test scores, I probably ought not say this out loud, but actually the low test scores bring more money into the district because of, like for example, the LASSO grant and some of the other grants that are there for low-performing campuses. The problem with that is, you don't want those low-performing campuses, number one, and you don't want half that grant to go to Region 16. But that's where your intervention comes from. They send interventionists in, and they help with overseeing and monitoring and walkthroughs and all those things that Ms. Alonso could tell you about if she wanted to stand up and cry. It's not an easy thing, but that really affects us in a positive way because we actually get more money in, but we also have a lot more accountability and monitoring going on, not just at the district level, but at the state level even. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda, yeah. Anybody else? That's why we're here. This will be the last one that we do on this issue. So if you have questions, now's the time to ask. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for having this because it has informed several people. I'm sad that there's not more people in attendance, but thank you for the information that you've given us.
Well, the good thing about it is it's live streamed back there right now, but it also means it's going to be on recording and it'll be out there for you to recapture. So, what is that going to be? YouTube, Apple TV, however you get your YouTube stuff, podcast. I don't know. Kara's got this whole line, she says, but I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to add? Anything you guys want to add?
No, I just add what Dr. Carter said about your enrollment and kids coming to school every day are one of the most valuable things for school budgets. If you can get your attendance up 2% with 3,900 kids times that $6,000 per student, that's pushing $1 million extra money that the district receives without hiring another staff person, driving another bus, doing anything. Because those kids are enrolled, but the district doesn't receive funds because they're enrolled. They receive funds because they actually come to school every given day. So that's one of the biggest things to encourage in your homes, your neighbors' homes, your kids' homes, all that sort of things. Make sure that those kids come to school as often as possible. Not with fever, but as often as possible.
I will say one thing that I think is important, your question about how will students help. I was a superintendent in 2018, and I felt like our budget was tight then. That's 35 cents of compression ago. And so what school districts have to do, if you were looking at your fund balance earlier, one part of it was not filling positions when they leave. And if you don't fill those positions, guess what? Student to teacher ratio climbs, and you wind up, instead of having 15 or 17 students in a class, you've got 24 or 25. So what popped in my head right then was one of the biggest benefits to students is you can keep your student to teacher ratio lower, which helps keep teachers sane and also helps students learn. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits to the student-teacher ratio piece. So, yeah.
So would you say the funds will help bring in more teachers and open up more positions, or just benefit the ones that are here now?
I think both. I think it's gonna do both. I think if we can get our, that's not even funny. If we, well, I'm not even gonna tell you that story. Well, I might know. It actually is gonna help both sides of it. It's gonna help with recruitment, but it's also gonna help with retention. If we get our salaries up in the neighborhood of Dumas and Amarillo and Pampa and Canyon and some of those other places, that's gonna be a good thing. That's one of the reasons why we put a daycare in this year. And we're funding that. That was fully funded by the district. So we channeled money away from another source and put it into having a daycare. That's a retention tool. That's a recruitment tool to try to get more people to come and be here. But both of those are going to be true. If you raise your salaries, you're going to be more inclined to have people here. The other thing I would say is straightening up the accountability with the test scores is also going to help bring people here. And that's why Mr. Norton couldn't be here tonight, because he had to go. But I'm excited for him to be here, and the changes that he's making with the curriculum, the changes that he's making with monitoring. And I'm thinking that we're going to be in great shape in 2 years, like we need to be. And that's going to be a huge recruitment tool as well.
What's considered absent now? Because before they used to say, like, we try to be mindful of our doctor's appointments and stuff, but we still have them. Like, it used to be, if you check your kid stays till 10 o'clock or whatever, he's not considered absent. But now it's like, we check him out before school's out, the kid's considered absent. Like, how's that work?
There's two types of I'll quote the commissioner. There's two types of attendance. There's attendance for money and attendance for credit. Okay? Attendance for money is 10 o'clock. If you're there at 10 o'clock, you're going to get, we get credit. Same thing at the high school. If you're there for the attendance period, whenever it is, we get paid. The problem becomes if you're a junior, if you're junior high student or a high school student, it becomes a credit issue. So just use high school for an example. We had some students last year that had 64 absences. Because what happens is on the attendance, if you miss one class period, you're out for the whole day. That's attendance for credit. That's the difference. So as long as that student was here at 10 o'clock or second or third period, we got paid. But if they keep missing 6th, 7th, and 8th period, they're not going to get credit in 6th, 7th, and 8th period because they're going to lose. And accountability. And accountability is even going to be affected on that as well. So if you have to take your child to the doctor, one of the best things to do is let them come to school, take them to the doctor, bring them back with a doctor's note. If they can make it that day, it doesn't even count against them. That's the best thing. The other thing is when we, some of those that are not sick but reoccurring doctor visits, do those on days when we have staff development or on half days and things like that to try to work the system a little bit better where they're not missing school.
So have we researched why kids are missing 64 days? Is it like, they're just not coming, they don't want to be there? Is it they don't have transportation to get there? Is it like bad weather days? Their families don't have vehicles? Are we doing what we can to get these kids in school?
I would say the answer is yes to all the above. Some kids don't want to be here. Some kids get here and leave. Some parents don't care. I'm not going to say that out loud, but you're right. Some parents don't. Some parents don't make sure that their kids are here. I mean, I've been in places where accountability is not an issue, where we have A's and B's and we're doing great. So board members will take their kids on cruises during the middle of the school year. And notice I said board members. Now, if board members feel like they can take their kids on a cruise in the middle of the school year, what does everybody else think? Well, attendance doesn't matter. Hey, it does affect funding and it does affect accountability. So I think anything we can do to raise that. That's why I am so thankful to the Stevens for the Walkers, for donating that car. The last 6 weeks we had 174 kids get to take a coupon and go put it in that whatever that thing is he turns. Hopper, that's a good word. 174 kids got to put it in the hopper. That's 174 chances at that car. And guess what? They get to put it in again this 6 weeks, and the next 6 weeks, and the next 6 weeks. And it's motivating some of them to come to school. You say, well, how do you know that? Because from freshmen to juniors, we had 323 kids that missed 1 day or no days. Hey, that's pretty good at the high school. That's real good. So anything we can do to increase the attendance is gonna, as David said, it's gonna affect the funding in a positive way. So,
So how do y'all budget for that?
pardon me?
Like, how do y'all budget for the money that you don't get or do get for that? When does that get put into the, because you don't know until the end of the year, right? So that money gets,
Well, our budget is usually somewhere between 92 and 93% of what our funding is, because we're not gonna budget 98%. Even in districts where I had 98%, I budgeted 92% anyway. And I put the rest of it in different spots to make sure I could buy a bus or do what I needed to do when I needed to do it. What happens for us is, I mean, we were scurrying in the 5th, 6 weeks trying to figure out, hey, we're at 92%, we gotta get it up because we budgeted at 93. So you don't budget all your money. You try to figure out what the attendance has been over, a certain period of time, and you budget in that area. And then, if you're lucky and you get 90, like for example, this year, if we're lucky, the VATRE passes, we got one windfall. If the attendance rate goes to 95% and stays there, that's 2% we didn't budget. We'll get that in September. That's good, and that's what we want.
Carter, online, I have a question on where do we compare with other districts our size with our budget?
Oh, I think comparison, if you're talking about districts our size, I think we're very competitive, very comparable. Like I said, we're 82, 83% staff. Most of our budget is going toward people, but I think we're comparable.
I have a question.
Yes.
Right now, you said that, in order for y'all to do that VATRE y'all did, you have pulled money out from some of the program or whatever. Is that gonna happen with this VATRE or whatever it's called? Is that gonna happen? Is that a possible thing that's gonna happen? You're gonna pull money out of there to pay something else? Another program that probably doesn't benefit all of us? All of the students?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, but let me try to answer it this way. There were some things that Danielle showed you when she went through the budget pretty quick, where you look at that and you say, well, okay, we budgeted $88,000 because that's what we were supposed to get, but we only spent $80,000. So that gives me a surplus of $8,165. What do I do with that money? Well, I may have a program over here that needs that money, so I do a budget amendment and move that over to another area. It's not that we're gonna take it to make a part of the budget fail, but we might use it because, for example, I'll give you a good example. We budgeted money this year for equipment, maintenance equipment. And we were told not long ago, we're not gonna budget any equipment, we're not gonna buy any equipment. So we've already started spending some of that money for other things that we need to have done around the district. So it's not that you rob it, but you may move it because you don't need it. Did that answer?
It kinda answered my question, but another question I have. This VATRE that y'all did, right? Does it benefit all the students in the Hereford ISD? Or, because I know it doesn't. And the money that you used to build that, couldn't you have paid a teacher, a real teacher that's certified? Because I know that y'all have a lot of uncertified teachers in the campuses. But couldn't you have paid a real teacher to educate our students?
Well, I would say that our first, and HR sitting right there.
daycare for their kids to go to so they can get educated?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
And it doesn't benefit all the students.
I'm gonna get to that here in just a second, but
But you're never gonna benefit everybody 100%.
no, not with every program you won't.
Well, then why make the VATRE thing? If it's not gonna
Our first, let me answer it this way. Our first regard, every time we have a job opening,
Worked 100%.
I mean, no, it
Right,
This is coming into the general, I mean,
right.
this is
Okay, I'll try again. When we go out and we post a job, our first priority is to hire a certified teacher. If we don't have a certified teacher, then we go to the next step. It doesn't have anything to do with programs or things that we're doing. That's just the reality of Hereford. And it's not just Hereford, it's all around the state. There's a huge shortage of certified teachers. And we've done things to try to work with that. The state's done things to try to work with that, and we're working through it. The daycare thing is another thing altogether. We did that because we had some students that were with child who dropped out of school. We've gotten 2 of those back, and they're going to graduate. To me, that's a plus, and that's a positive. The other thing is that we have teachers that have young children who are paying a lot of money. And honestly, we are charging half what everybody else is charging as a benefit to our staff and as a benefit to our students. So there are benefits to the program because a student that has a child, for whatever reason, can bring that child to the daycare, and then can also take part in the day of helping that child grow up. So that parent, that young child that's had a child can now get some parenting skills and some other things they need inside of a real environment. So that's why the decision was made. I don't know how long, Ms. Blankenship, did y'all discuss doing that?
Well, we've discussed it for years and years. Long before I was superintendent, we
Right.
talked about the daycare issue. And that's just one of those benefits and things that we've talked about, much to what you just pointed out, is we've got kids that are graduating because we're keeping them in school.
Right.
We've got staff that are able to stay here, and I know Ms. Walmer can speak to this as well. It was just a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we actually had staff members, 2 of them, having to drive from Hereford to Canyon to put their kids in daycare because there was no room for daycare here. We've had a daycare close in town, and so we just don't have places for our staff to take their kids. So we literally had them drive to Canyon, drop their kids off, come back and teach in Hereford, go back that evening, pick their kids up, and come back home in Hereford. You know, we had to do something. We had to
Right.
start talking about this and thinking outside the box. And I applaud the district for making it happen. We've been working on it, we just couldn't get there. There was a prevalence in our community that thought if we provide this, we're perpetuating the problem. We're actually solving the problem. It's a solution to the problem, not perpetuating a problem.
Correct.
So, to your point, we've been talking about it for a number of years, and again, I just want to applaud the district for getting
Yeah.
there and making this happen, not only for our staff, but also for our students.
Well, and we also had how many did we have drive through Hereford? Teachers that applied for a job in Hereford, and one of the first questions they had was, do you have a daycare? So, no, you don't have a daycare. Well, I'm going to drive through Hereford and go to Dimmitt because they have a daycare. And we lost a couple of teachers to surrounding districts simply because we didn't have a place to put kids. Now we do, and that's why we did it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I want to thank you, Dr. Carter, thank everybody at HISD, and thank the school board for putting this meeting on and educating the public and everything you've done. Because when you do something like this, you take a chance of being railroaded, and y'all have taken the time on social media to answer the hard questions for people and have been very professional about it. And I think that's why this hasn't passed in other school districts. And I just want to thank y'all for your hard work and making it online for people that couldn't be here. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment. Everybody here went to school somewhere. You attended school in a building that somebody else provided for you through taxes. We're talking about taxes, we worry about taxes going up and paying for things. All of us have benefited from something that somebody else did. Amen. Now it's our turn to benefit kids today, and maybe our taxes will go up, maybe they won't. But the issue tonight, to me, Do you want that $1.9 million coming back from the state? If you do, you gotta go vote for that proposition. You gotta go vote for it. Because the state's not gonna cut us a check and give it to us until we vote it in. That's the purpose of having this meeting, is so we can decide what do you want to do about that $1.9 million. If you want it to go back to the state, don't vote. Or vote no. But if you vote for it, we're going to get the money. The school will be better able to work through some of these problems that we have because we're short funded in so many different ways. Nothing is free.
That's right.
You gotta have some money, some way to get everything going. Districts do that through taxes. States do too. Governments do too. That's the way the system works. So, I hope all of you will go out when it's time to vote and vote yes for the VATRE, because that's very important for the district. Thank you, man, for coming and having the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything you want to say? Any other questions that we can answer before? Yes, sir.
One last question on the voting part. Also had some people ask about, they've seen where they have to register ahead of time.
Yes.
So they're asking if they didn't already register by a certain time, can they still go in November 4th and vote?
If you didn't register by October 6th, you cannot vote in this election. It had to be, the next election, you can register anytime you want to, but the deadline for this election was October 6th.
That's just a rule that people have to follow. It's
Right.
not something that the district says you can't do it if you don't do it.
Yeah.
We got rules. We gotta know what they are, and we gotta follow them. It doesn't make any difference about everything else, all that other stuff.
Yeah, the state sets those guidelines up. They'll tell you when we have our general election in May, they'll come back and say if you're not registered by, then you can't vote in that election. October 6th was the drop dead date for us this election. Anything else? Okay, on Friday, this may not get in the paper, it may not. Because of some of these generous bankers over here and some of the other generous bankers in town, there's going to be a sausage wrap cook between 11 and 1. I think one grill is going to be located in front of the Hereford Credit Union. The other grill is going to be catty corner on the other side of the courthouse. You go in, you vote, you bring your sticker back, you show them, they're going to give you a wrap, some chips, and a drink. And that'll be good. That'll be good. So wanted to be sure you have an opportunity to get out there and be a part of that. If there's no further questions, then we're going to end this town hall. Be watching your email, though, because the Hereford Proud Ambassadors will continue to meet quarterly. And the more of you that take part in that, the more transparency we can have with issues like this. And so we encourage you to come. Thank you very much for being here.